The bedroom smelled of sweat, and something else entirely. Something ancient, something wrong. 26-year-old Nathan Cole lay on his bed, his entire body convulsing as though electricity was being poured through his bones. His father gripped his left arm. His older brother held down his right. But Nathan was strong, stronger than either of them had ever seen him. And the thick veins bulging across his neck told everyone in that room that whatever was happening inside this young man was something that no amount of human strength could stop. "Let go of me." His scream tore through the walls of the house, punched through the closed windows, and bled out into the freezing November night outside. "Something is inside me, Dot. I can feel it moving. Please, just let me cut it out." He had grabbed a letter opener from the desk. His brother had barely managed to wrestle it away. Nathan Cole was not a man you would ever expect to see like this. At 26, he was already a rising surgical resident at one of Chicago's most prestigious hospitals. He had graduated at the top of his medical school class. His name appeared on a research paper published in the Journal of Neuroscience when he was just 24 years old. He was the kind of young man that professors pointed to during lectures and said, "That one is going to change things." But tonight, Nathan Cole was not changing anything. Tonight, Nathan Cole was dying. It had started at 2:17 in the morning, 4 nights ago. Nathan had been sleeping soundly when a burning sensation shot upward from the center of his chest. Not the dull ache of a pulled muscle, not the familiar clench of a nightmare. This was something else entirely. This was a needle made of fire, being pushed slowly, methodically, through the soft tissue of his lungs, dragging itself upward toward his throat. He had jerked awake, gasping. The room was 68 degrees. The ceiling fan turned lazily above him, and yet Nathan was drenched in sweat so complete that his sheets looked like he'd been dragged out of a lake. Then, it moved. He felt it. Something sliding through the channel of his left arm. Not on his skin. Not a bug. Not a twitch. Not a cramp. Inside. Deep inside. Behind the muscle, threading itself through the narrow space between tissue and vein, deliberate and slow, like a living wire rerouting itself through his body. A sensation so specific, so impossible that Nathan, a man who had spent 6 years studying the human body down to its cellular structure, went completely, utterly still. For 10 full seconds, he did not breathe. Then the pain doubled. His arm went cold as ice water, and from his elbow to his wrist, the skin rose. Not from a bruise, not from swelling, but from something beneath it, moving, visible, slow. Nathan opened his mouth and screamed. By dawn, 3 of Nathan's medical colleagues were standing in his childhood bedroom. His parents had driven through the night to bring him home, running every test they could manage outside a hospital setting. Blood pressure, normal. Pulse, slightly elevated, but within range. // Blood oxygen, perfect. Temperature, 98.6. By every measurable indicator available to modern medicine, Nathan Cole was a completely healthy 26-year-old man. "There's nothing here," said Dr. Parrish, Nathan's residency mentor of 3 years. "Nathan, I need to ask you directly. Have you taken anything? Any substance at all? Some research chemicals can cause severe sensory disturbances that..." "Michael." Nathan's voice was barely above a whisper, but the restraint in it was more frightening than screaming. "I'm a surgeon. I know what drug-induced fasciculations feel like. I know what a paresthetic episode looks like. What is happening to me is neither of those things." He pulled back his sleeve. Everyone in the room went quiet. // Beneath the pale skin of his forearm, something long, dark, and alive coiled in a slow, deliberate arc, visible for 3 full seconds, and then it vanished toward his shoulder. Every trained medical professional in that room took one collective step backward. "Get him to the hospital," said Dr. Parrish. Something had left his voice, something that sounded like certainty. Now, 4 days in the hospital, dozens of tests, an MRI that showed nothing, slash, slash, a CT scan that showed nothing, slash, slash, comprehensive blood panels, nothing, slash, slash, an ultrasound of his arm, conducted in real time while 3 nurses watched the visible movement under his skin with their own eyes. Nothing. Whatever crawled through Nathan Cole was invisible to every machine that human science had ever built. But every night, when the lights in his hospital room dimmed, it became more active. It would begin in his feet, a faint, creeping sensation. Then it would thread upward through his calves, his thighs, climbing the column of his spine like something that knew the map of his body better than he did. When it reached his rib cage, Nathan would begin to scream. When it climbed toward his neck, he would begin to bleed. Thin trickles from his nose and the corners of his mouth, with no broken tissue, no identifiable source on any scan, no explanation that any doctor in that building could give. He lost 11 pounds in 4 days. The skin beneath his eyes turned the deep purple gray of a 3-day-old bruise. On the morning of the 5th day, his attending physician called Nathan's father into the hallway and said, in the careful, measured tone that doctors use only when they have run out of answers, "Mr. Cole, I don't know how to tell you this." A pause. "Your son's organs are declining. Not from any identifiable cause, not from anything we can treat. If this continues at the current rate," he stopped. "I would suggest calling anyone who needs to see him." James Cole was a civil engineer. He had spent 40 years of his life believing in things he could measure. He walked to a quiet corner of the hospital corridor. He sat down in a plastic chair. He stared at the floor tiles for a long time. Then he took out his phone and called his mother. Eleanor Cole was 81 years old. She lived alone in a house in rural Tennessee that she had refused to leave for 30 years. She did not own a smartphone. She kept a landline phone, the old kind, with a cord attached to the wall. When it rang at 6 in the morning, she picked it up on the first ring, as if she had been waiting. "Mama," James said. "Nathan is. I know." Her voice was steady as stone. "I've been dreaming about it for 3 nights. James, listen to me very carefully. Don't let the doctors give up. Don't move him. I'm coming. Mama, he's in Chicago. The doctors are saying. The doctors cannot help him." She said it without cruelty, without hesitation. What is happening to Nathan is not something written in any textbook. I know this, because I have seen it before, and I know this because of something I did 60 years ago that I have been praying every single day I would never have to account for. A long silence. "Tell his mother to check under his mattress." They found it inside a small black cloth pouch, tucked between the mattress and the box spring. A pouch that had not been there when Nathan moved into his apartment 3 years ago. A pouch that had somehow remained undiscovered through sheet changes, through cleaning, through 3 years of ordinary life. Inside, a small figure fashioned from dark, grave damp clay. Woven into its chest, a lock of Nathan's hair. Recognizable because Nathan had a distinctive silver streak above his left temple since his early 20s. Pressed into its torso at 7 precise points, 7 iron pins. Each pin had been driven in at a specific angle, not randomly, deliberately, with knowledge. The figure's mouth had been sealed shut with red thread. Nathan's mother held it for 4 seconds. Then she set it very carefully on the counter, walked to the bathroom, and did not come back for a long time. Eleanor Cole arrived the next morning. She was a small woman, thin the way that old trees are thin, not fragile, reduced, but unbreakable. She walked into Nathan's hospital room, and when she saw her grandson, the sunken eyes, the gray-blue tinge to his skin, the way he lay completely motionless and didn't look up when she entered, her face did something that James Cole had never seen it do in 81 years. It broke, just for a moment. Then it became still again. She turned to everyone in the room. I need the room. Mama, the doctors, James. She sat beside Nathan's bed and held his hand for a long time without speaking. When she finally did speak, her voice was low enough that only he could hear. Nathan, whatever is inside you, whatever you feel moving, I need you to understand that it is not stronger than you are, but it is real. And I am going to tell you something now that I have never told anyone in this family, because I have spent 60 years trying to forget it. And I am so sorry, so deeply sorry, that my past found its way to you. Nathan looked at her then. His eyes were bloodshot. His lips were cracked and bleeding. He looked like he had aged 10 years and 5 days, but he looked at her. Eleanor Cole had grown up in a community where certain kinds of knowledge, old knowledge, knowledge that existed long before churches and courthouses and medical schools, were passed down through specific women in specific families. She had learned from her own grandmother, who had learned from hers. In the rural Tennessee of the 1960s, people came to Eleanor when they needed something fixed that ordinary medicine and ordinary law could not touch. She had always tried to help. She had always tried to only help. But helping required tools. And tools, in the wrong hands, could go catastrophically wrong. 60 years ago, a 19-year-old girl named Ruth Kavanaugh had appeared at Eleanor's door. Ruth's husband, a strong young man named Edwin, was dying. And the dying was not natural. Something had been done to him. Something deliberate. Something specific. And Ruth knew it, even if she could not prove it in any court. Eleanor had known it the moment she saw Edwin. She recognized the signature immediately. Edwin Kavanaugh was under a death working. Someone had paid to have his life pulled out of him, one thread at a time, slash, slash. Eleanor had done everything within her power. She had prepared a transference vessel, a clay figure made from Edwin's own hair, combined with the ash from a crossroads fire, designed to draw the working out of Edwin's body and into the vessel, where it could be safely neutralized. She had sent Edwin's father to place the vessel at the crossroads on the road outside of town, following her instructions precisely. But Edwin's father had been afraid, or weak, or both. Instead of going to the crossroads outside town, he had placed the vessel at a small intersection inside the neighborhood, barely a block from Eleanor's own house. He had not told her. And Eleanor, not knowing, had completed the ritual from her side, the working transferred out of Edwin perfectly. But instead of going to the open crossroads where it could be safely dispelled, it flooded into the first living soul that came into contact with the vessel that night. That soul was a 17-year-old boy named Thomas Kavanaugh, slash, Edwin's younger brother, walking to a friend's house, stepping over the vessel in the dark without seeing it. Within 30 seconds, he was on the ground. He was dead before the ambulance arrived. Eleanor's hands, holding Nathan's, had begun to shake. "She's not wrong to blame me," she said quietly. "I trusted a frightened man to do a very precise thing. I should have done it myself. Thomas died because of a choice I made. Not because I intended it, but intention doesn't bring a boy back to life." She exhaled slowly. Ruth Kavanaugh watched her youngest son die on a neighborhood street, and she spent every year after that believing, knowing, that it was my mistake that killed him. I heard, a few years ago, that her health had been failing. I think she decided to spend whatever time she had left on this, on reaching you, to reach me, to make me feel what she felt, slash. She looked at Nathan. "That's enough talking. There's a man I need to call. His name was Calvin Marsh, slash, 74 years old. retired professor of anthropology from a university in Nashville. He lived 40 minutes outside the city in a house with no internet connection and bookshelves that ran floor to ceiling on every single wall. He arrived at the hospital the next morning carrying a plain leather bag and the expression of a man who had been expecting this particular phone call for a long time. He spent 4 minutes in Nathan's room. He came back out. "Same working that was used on Edwin Kavanaugh," he said, "but 60 years more refined. Whoever she found to do this knew exactly what they were doing. She wanted it inescapable this time." He looked at Eleanor steadily. "She wanted you to watch. Can you stop it?" "Yes." He paused. "But I need to find the anchor point, where the working was fixed before it was transferred to Nathan. It will be within a quarter mile of where he lives. Buried. Underground. They found it 2 days later. // In the small dirt patch beside Nathan's apartment building's back entrance. A hollow in the earth, burned clean, with a precise circle of iron fragments arranged in a pattern that Calvin photographed carefully without touching a single piece. "There," Calvin said, very quietly. "That's the heart of it." What happened next, Nathan did not fully witness. He was drifting, half-conscious, when Calvin Marsh sat beside his bed and opened the black cloth pouch on the bedside table. He set the clay figure on the flat surface of a worn wooden board he had brought with him, and with a pair of iron pliers, old, dark, with age, he reached for the first pin. It came free. Nathan exhaled. A long, shuddering breath that made every nurse in the room look up sharply. // The second pin. The crawling beneath his skin. The constant, relentless movement that had been threading through his body for 5 days, slowed. // By the 5th pin, Nathan was crying. Not from pain, from the absence of it. After days of a burning wire dragging itself through his body, the departure of it was almost unbearable in its own right. A void opening where the pain had been. The 6th pin came free. // The clay figure in Calvin's hands began to smoke. // Calvin said nothing. His hands did not waver. The 7th pin. // The figure split down the center with a sound like a dry branch snapping, and something left the room. A quality of cold. A specific silence. Gone so suddenly that it felt like a door slamming in a house where every other room is empty. Nathan Cole took the first full breath he had taken in 5 days. He put both hands over his face, and he wept. 6 weeks later, Nathan was back in his residency, thinner than before. The weight had not entirely returned. Shadows that his colleagues noticed under his eyes but never mentioned. He was different in the specific way that people who have come very close to death are always different afterward. Quieter, more careful. He called his grandmother every Sunday. 2 months after Nathan's recovery, Eleanor received a call from a cousin who still lived in Ruth Kavanaugh's town. Ruth had passed. Peacefully, the cousin said. In her sleep. Without pain. Eleanor sat with this for a long time. She thought about Thomas Kavanaugh, 17 years old, on a neighborhood street 60 years ago. She thought about Ruth, who had carried a grief so heavy that it had outlasted her health and her body and almost everything else about her. She thought about what Calvin Marsh had said to her, quietly, in the hospital hallway the morning after the last pin was removed. Eleanor. Ruth Kavanaugh was not a villain. She was a grieving mother who ran out of time. And you are not a villain. You were a woman who trusted the wrong person on a dark night 60 years ago. Everyone in this story was trying to do the right thing. Everyone in this story failed. That's how most tragedies work. Not evil, just failure. and the people who survive it carrying the longest. Nathan Cole does not speak about what happened in those 5 days. When colleagues ask about his hospital stay, he says it was a rare inflammatory condition, resolved now. Ancient history. He does not mention the clay figure. He does not mention the 7th pin. He does not mention that there are still nights in his apartment in Chicago when he wakes at exactly 2:17 in the morning and lies completely still and listens, / just to make sure. Just to make sure that nothing moves. Subscribe today, and from now on, don't be afraid. Just understand what I mean. A new video will be uploaded every week.